At our son's 30th birthday party, my husband turned to me, in front of everyone, looked into my eyes and said, "I wish I had never married you." I fainted right there. The next morning I didn't scream or cry. I simply made a phone call, and what happened after left him pale. But let me start from the beginning, so you understand exactly how I got here. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. I spent 6 hours making Trevor's birthday cake. Not a store-bought sheet cake with generic frosting, but a 3-layer chocolate masterpiece with handmade fondant decorations. 30 candles, each one placed with care. I'm Margaret Sullivan, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 58 years old, and I've been married to Richard for 35 years. Trevor is our only child. The party was at Richard's country club in Denver, the one he joined 3 years ago without asking me. I paid the $8,500 membership fee with money I'd been saving for a trip to see my sister in Florida. Richard said it was important for business connections. I said yes, like I always did. I arrived early that Saturday afternoon to set up. The banquet room overlooked the golf course, all polished wood and leather chairs. Diane, my daughter-in-law, was already there with the event coordinator, rearranging my carefully planned seating chart. "Maggie, we need to move you to table 7. Diane said without looking up. She's 35, blonde, always dressed like she's heading to a board meeting even on weekends. She married Trevor 7 years ago, and I welcomed her with open arms. I thought we'd be close. "Table 7 is in the back corner," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I won't be able to see Trevor open his gifts." "It's better for the flow of the room," Diane replied, still not making eye contact. The coordinator nodded sympathetically at me but said nothing. I didn't argue. I carried my cake to the kitchen myself, box balanced carefully in my arms. The chef took it from me with a professional smile. "Beautiful work," he said. It was the only compliment I'd receive all day. Guests started arriving around 6. I recognized most of them. Richard's business partners and their wives, people from the club, Diane's parents who barely acknowledged me, and Richard's sister, Samantha. Everyone calls her Sam. She's 2 years younger than me, 56, and she's never liked me. Not since Richard chose me over the girl Sam wanted him to marry back in college. Sam air-kissed my cheek. "Maggie, you look tired. Are you sleeping enough?" "I'm fine, thank you." "You really should consider that spa retreat I mentioned. You need to take better care of yourself." She smiled, but her eyes were cold. Trevor arrived with Diane's parents at 6:30. My son hugged me briefly, distracted, already pulled into conversations with his father's friends. He works for Richard's commercial real estate company now, has for the past 3 years. Before that, he wanted to be a teacher. I remember him talking about it over dinner when he was in college, his eyes bright with plans. Then Richard sat him down one weekend and explained that teaching didn't pay enough, that the family business needed him, that he'd be letting everyone down if he pursued something so impractical. Trevor changed his major the following semester. Richard appeared at 7, even though the party started at 6. He was coming from the office, he said, on a Saturday evening. He shook hands with everyone, accepted congratulations for raising such a successful son, and didn't look at me once. By 7:30, everyone was seated for dinner. I sat at table 7 with 2 couples I'd never met, and Sam, who spent the entire meal texting on her phone. The food was excellent. Prime rib, roasted vegetables, Caesar salad. I'd chosen the menu myself, paid for it with the credit card Richard and I shared. Well, the card was in both our names, but I was the one who'd transferred $15,000 from my personal account last month to cover Richard's business expenses. He'd promised to pay me back. He hadn't yet. After dinner, the coordinator dimmed the lights. I watched from my corner table as they brought out my cake, 30 candles blazing. Everyone sang happy birthday. Trevor smiled that smile he used to give me when he was little, genuine and warm. And for a moment I forgot where I was sitting. Then Richard stood up. He held a champagne glass, tapping it with his fork until the room went quiet. He's 61. Still handsome in that polished way that comes from expensive haircuts and tailored suits. His voice carried easily across the room. "I want to say a few words about my son," Richard began. People smiled, settled back in their chairs. "Trevor, you've made me proud. You've built a career, married a wonderful woman, and you've done it all with integrity and strength." I waited for him to mention me, to acknowledge the mother who'd raised Trevor while Richard traveled for work, who'd sat through every parent-teacher conference alone, who'd taught Trevor to ride a bike and tie his shoes and believe in himself. Richard raised his glass higher. "You didn't inherit weakness. You didn't inherit the need to be coddled or the inability to handle criticism." His eyes found mine across the room. "You're nothing like your mother in that way, and I'm grateful for it." The room shifted uncomfortably. A few people coughed. Sam's eyes widened, but she didn't look surprised. She looked satisfied. Diane touched Richard's arm gently, a warning, but he shook his head. He was still looking at me. "In fact," Richard continued, his voice steady and clear, "if I'm being completely honest, I wish I had never married you, Margaret." The silence that followed was absolute. Someone dropped a fork. It clattered against a plate, impossibly loud. I couldn't breathe. The room tilted sideways. I tried to stand, to say something, anything, but my legs wouldn't work. The last thing I remember was Trevor's face, frozen in shock, and then the floor rushing up to meet me. I woke up in an ambulance. A paramedic was checking my blood pressure. "You fainted," he said gently. "We're taking you to Denver General as a precaution." "Where's my son?" My voice came out hoarse. "Your husband is following in his car. He said your son stayed to handle the guests." Richard, not Trevor. Of course. At the hospital, they ran tests. Blood work, EKG, checked me for head injury. Everything came back normal. Acute stress response, the doctor said. "Has something traumatic happened recently?" I almost laughed. "You could say that." Richard arrived 2 hours later. He sat in the chair beside my bed, his face unreadable. We didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, "You embarrassed me tonight." "I embarrassed you." I repeated the words slowly, testing them, fainting like that, making a scene. "You told everyone you wished you'd never married me. I'd had too much to drink. You know how I get." I did know. Richard drank expensive scotch at business dinners and said things he claimed not to remember the next day. But he always remembered. He just pretended not to, and I always let him. "I want to go home," I said. "The doctor wants to keep you overnight for observation. Then you can leave." Richard stood up. For just a moment, something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or regret. But it passed quickly. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said, and he was gone. I spent the night in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, asking if I needed anything. I said no every time. What I needed, no one could give me. Around 3 a.m, I realized something. I'd spent 35 years trying to be enough for Richard, supportive enough, quiet enough, undemanding enough. I'd erased myself one compromise at a time, and it still wasn't enough. It would never be enough. I picked up my cell phone from the bedside table. My hands were steady now. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Alan Kepler. I'd met him at a charity event 2 years ago. He was a lawyer who specialized in, as he'd put it, complex marital asset disputes. We'd exchanged business cards. I'd kept his. I composed an email, short and direct. "Alan, I need to schedule an urgent meeting. Monday, 8 a.m. Subject, dissolution of marriage and recovery of diverted assets. Please confirm availability. Margaret Sullivan." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I lay back and closed my eyes. I didn't sleep, but for the first time in 35 years, I felt something close to peace. They released me from the hospital Sunday morning at 10. Richard didn't come to pick me up. He sent a text at 9:30. "Busy with damage control. Take an Uber. I'll reimburse you." I took a taxi instead. Cost me $42 I didn't want to spend, but I couldn't stand the thought of making small talk with a stranger about why I was leaving a hospital alone on a Sunday morning. The house was empty when I got home. Our house, though it never really felt like mine. Richard bought it 12 years ago without consulting me. a sprawling 4-bedroom in Cherry Creek that cost $1. $2 million. An investment property, he'd said. We never did flip it. He liked the address too much. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen island with my laptop. Alan Kepler had responded to my email at 6 a.m. Margaret, I'm sorry to hear about your situation. Monday 8 a.m. works. My office is at 1550 17th Street, Suite 400. Please bring any financial documents you have access to. Looking forward to helping you. Alan. I opened the filing cabinet in Richard's home office. He kept it locked, but I knew where he hid the key. Taped under his desk drawer, same place for 15 years. I'd never looked through his files before. It felt like crossing a line, but after yesterday, I realized the line had already been crossed. Inside were folders organized by year, tax returns going back to 1995, bank statements for accounts I didn't know existed, and at the very back, a folder labeled Sullivan Property Holdings LLC. It took me 3 hours to make sense of it all, but slowly, a pattern emerged. In 1995, my mother died. She left me $180,000, her entire life savings. She'd worked as a nurse for 40 years, saved every penny. When the check arrived, Richard said we should invest it in his business. He was starting his commercial real estate company, needed capital, promised I'd be a 50% partner. I trusted him. I signed the papers without reading them carefully. Now, looking at the documents, I saw the truth. The company was registered solely in Richard's name. There was no record of my $180,000 contribution anywhere. It simply disappeared into general operating expenses with no equity stake, no partnership agreement, nothing. I'd financed his empire, and he'd made me invisible in the paperwork. My phone buzzed. Trevor's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Mom, his voice was strained. Are you okay? I tried to call last night. I'm home now. I'm fine. I'm so sorry about what Dad said. He was drunk. He didn't mean it. I closed my eyes. Trevor, your father looked directly at me when he said those words. He meant them. He's under a lot of stress. The business has been, don't make excuses for him. I've been making excuses for your father for 35 years. I'm done. Silence on the other end. Then, what does that mean? It means I'm seeing a lawyer tomorrow. Mom, wait. Don't do anything rash. Can I come over? I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him that he'd stayed at the party while I was in an ambulance. But he was my son. Fine. Come now. He arrived 20 minutes later. Diane was with him. Of course she was. They sat across from me in the living room, Trevor on the couch, Diane perched on the arm like she was ready to leave at any moment. She wore yoga pants and a pristine white sweater, her hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail. Mom, I've been thinking, Trevor began. Maybe you and Dad need some space. You could stay with Aunt Carol in Florida for a few weeks. Get some sun. Come back when things aren't so raw. I looked at Diane. She was studying her manicure, a small smile playing at her lips. This was Diane's idea, I said. Trevor shifted uncomfortably. We both think it would be good for everyone. What I think would be good, I said slowly, is honesty. Your father humiliated me in front of 50 people. And now you're here to convince me to leave town so he doesn't have to face what he did. That's not, Trevor started, but Diane cut him off. Margaret, you have to understand how difficult you make things sometimes. Her voice was honey-sweet. Richard has important business relationships. Last night was supposed to be about celebrating Trevor, and instead everyone's talking about you fainting and causing a scene. I caused the scene. Well, yes, if you'd just laughed it off, it would have been fine. But you always have to be so dramatic. I stared at her. This woman I'd welcomed into my family. This woman who'd never thanked me for the down payment Richard and I gave them for their house. $25,000 from my personal savings. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, Trevor began. Not you, her. Diane, get out of my house. Diane's face flushed. This isn't your house, Margaret. It's Richard's house. Your name isn't even on the deed. The words hit me like cold water. I looked at Trevor. Is that true? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad said it was for tax purposes, liability protection for the business. When did you know about this? A few years ago? Mom, it doesn't matter. You're married. What's his is yours. That's not how property law works, Trevor. You know that. He stood up abruptly. I can't do this right now. You need to calm down. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. We'll talk later, when you're more rational. He guided Diane toward the door. I followed them. Trevor, do you remember when you were 7 and your father missed your school play? He paused, hand on the doorknob. You were a tree in the forest scene. You had 2 lines. You'd practiced with me every night for 3 weeks. And when you said them, you looked right at the seat I'd saved for your father, and it was empty. Mom, I don't remember that. I do. And I remember you crying afterward, asking why Daddy didn't love you enough to come. I made excuses for him. I taught you that it was okay to disappoint the people who love you, and now here you are, doing exactly what he taught you. Diane tugged on Trevor's arm. Come on, she's being manipulative. This is exactly what your dad warned us about. Trevor, I need you to answer one question. Do you think your father was wrong to say what he said last night? He hesitated too long. It was harsh, he finally said. But Mom, you can be difficult. You're always so sensitive. Dad's under pressure. I stepped back. Get out. Mom, I mean it. Get out of this house. Both of you. They left. I watched Trevor's car pull out of the driveway. I went back to Richard's office and pulled out the small notebook I kept in my purse. I turned to a blank page and started writing names. Alan Kepler, my lawyer, as of tomorrow morning. Carol Patterson, my sister in Florida. James and Linda Brennan, friends from 20 years ago who'd sent me a Christmas card last year with a note. If you ever need anything, we're here. Then I photographed every document in Richard's filing cabinet with my phone. Every bank statement, every property deed. It took 2 hours. When I finished, I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, locked the cabinet, replaced the key. Richard came home at 8 that evening. He appeared in the kitchen doorway where I was making myself a sandwich. We need to talk, he said. Do we? Trevor called. He said you're threatening to see a lawyer. I'm not threatening. I have an appointment tomorrow at 8. Richard's expression hardened. Don't be stupid, Margaret. You have nothing. No job, no income, no assets in your name. You'll end up in some studio apartment. Maybe, but at least I'll have my dignity. Dignity doesn't pay the bills. No, I agreed. My mother's $180,000 paid the bills. The money that built your company. His face went pale. Just for a second, but I saw it. I don't know what you think you found. I found the truth, finally. I walked past him toward the stairs. I'm sleeping in the guest room. Don't bother me. Margaret, I turned back. Trevor said my name isn't on the deed to this house. Is that true? He didn't answer. I thought so. See you in court. I went upstairs and locked the guest room door. Then I pulled out my phone and looked at Alan Kepler's email one more time. Tomorrow at 8 a.m., my real life would begin. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Richard move around downstairs. Around midnight, I heard his footsteps on the stairs. He paused outside my door. The handle turned slowly, testing the lock. Then his footsteps retreated. At 5 a.m., I gave up on sleep. I showered, dressed in the navy pantsuit I'd bought for Trevor's college graduation 10 years ago. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my phone, scrolling through the photos I'd taken of Richard's documents. That's when I noticed something I'd missed yesterday. A bank statement from an account I didn't recognize. Wells Fargo, account number ending in 4829. Monthly deposits of $3,500, regular as clockwork, going back 4 years. And withdrawals at hotels, the Ritz-Carlton in Vail, the St. Julian in Boulder, the Brown Palace here in Denver. Always the same pattern. A hotel charge on Friday, another withdrawal at a restaurant the same evening, then nothing until the next month. I went back to Richard's office. The house was silent. His car was gone from the garage. I pulled out the filing cabinet key again. This time I looked in the drawer labeled Personal, 2019-2023. Inside were credit card statements for cards I'd never seen. American Express Platinum, Visa Signature, both in Richard's name only. The charges told a story. Tiffany and Coemo for $200. Nordstrom under $800. Victoria's Secret, $650. Restaurant charges for two at places Richard claimed he went to alone for business. And then I found the hotel receipts. The Ritz-Carlton, room 807, February 14th, 2020, Valentine's Day. I'd spent that evening alone because Richard said he had a client dinner in Vail. At the bottom of the drawer, a manila folder with no label. Inside were documents from Sullivan Property Holdings, LLC. Stock certificates, dated 2019. Richard had restructured the company, creating new shares. The majority went to him, but 20% went to someone else, Kelly Morrison. I pulled out my phone and searched. Kelly Morrison, Denver Real Estate. A professional photo came up immediately. Blonde, attractive, maybe 38. Senior Vice President, Sullivan Property Holdings, LLC. I clicked through to the company website. There she was in a group photo with Richard and 3 other executives. She stood next to him, her hand on his shoulder, both of them smiling. I went back to the stock certificates. 20% of the company, issued to Kelly Morrison in exchange for strategic business consultation and capital contribution. But there was no record of any capital contribution from Kelly. The only capital that built Sullivan Property Holdings came from my mother's $180,000. Richard had given my inheritance to his mistress. I heard a car in the driveway. I shoved everything back in the drawer and was pouring coffee when Richard walked in with Sam. His sister carried a bakery box and wore her concerned face. "Margaret, we brought croissants," Sam said. "We thought we should talk. Clear the air." "There's nothing to clear," I said. Richard poured himself coffee. "Sam's here as a mediator. We're family. We should be able to work through this without lawyers." "How long have you been sleeping with Kelly Morrison?" The coffee cup froze halfway to Richard's mouth. Sam's eyes widened, but not with surprise, with calculation. "I don't know what you're talking about," Richard said. "Kelly Morrison, Senior Vice President of your company, the woman you gave 20% of my mother's inheritance to." Sam set down her purse carefully. "Margaret, I think you're confused. Kelly is a valued business partner." "You knew," I said, looking at Sam. "You've known all along." "There's nothing to know," Sam said smoothly. "Richard and Kelly have a professional relationship." I pulled out my phone and showed them the photo of the hotel receipt. The Ritz-Carlton, February 14th, 2020, room 807. "Professional?" Richard's face went dark red. "You went through my private files. Your private files in our house, the house you bought with money from our joint account." Sam held up her hands. "Everyone needs to calm down. Margaret, maybe Richard made some mistakes, but stop pretending. You've never liked me, Sam. You wanted him to marry Chelsea Warren, the girl from your sorority." Sam's expression turned cold. "Chelsea would have been better for him." "Then why are you here?" "Because divorce is expensive and messy. Richard has a reputation to protect. I'm a partner in 2 of his investment deals. If this goes public, it affects all of us." So that was it. Sam wasn't worried about Richard or me. She was worried about her money. "Get out," I said. "Margaret, be reasonable," Richard started. "Both of you, get out." "It's not your house," Richard reminded me. "Your name isn't on anything. The house, the cars, the bank accounts." "We'll see what a judge says about that." Sam picked up her purse. "You have no income, no assets, no way to pay for a lawyer. What do you think is going to happen?" "I think I'm going to take back what's mine," Richard laughed. "You have nothing except what I gave you." "I had $180,000. My mother worked herself to death saving that money, and you stole it. I invested it, built a successful company. That's not stealing, that's business." "We'll let Alan Kepler decide what it is." Richard's eyes narrowed. "Who's Alan Kepler?" "My lawyer. I'm meeting him tomorrow at 8. Sam and Richard exchanged a look. "We can make this easy," Richard said. "If you drop this lawyer nonsense, I'll give you a settlement. $50,000. You sign a non-disclosure agreement, we split quietly. How much? 50,000. I almost laughed. You give your mistress 20% of a multi-million-dollar company, and you offer me 50,000. 75 then. Final offer. I want half. Half of everything. You're insane, Sam said. You contributed nothing to that company. I contributed $180,000. I contributed 35 years. I raised Trevor alone while Richard was building his empire. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane. We need to talk. Trevor is very upset. You're tearing this family apart. I held up the phone. Did you tell Diane to text me that? Richard shrugged. Trevor deserves to know what his mother is doing. What I'm doing? I'm not the one who stood up at his birthday party and humiliated his mother. You're twisting everything, Sam said. Richard set down his coffee cup. Fine, I'm sorry. There, does that fix everything? No. Then what do you want, Margaret? I want you to tell me the truth. How long have you been with Kelly? He hesitated. 4 years, maybe 5. And the stock certificates? She earned it. She's brought in major clients. With my money. With our money. Money I turned into something valuable. I nodded slowly. I'm going to prepare for my meeting with Alan tomorrow. Margaret, Richard's voice stopped me. If you do this, there's no going back. I'll fight you on everything. I'll make sure you end up with nothing. You've already made sure of that. I drove to Kinko's and made copies of everything. Every photo on my phone, printed and organized. It cost me $127 and took 3 hours. 2 complete sets. One for Alan Kepler, one for me. When I got home, Richard's car was gone. A note on the counter. Staying at the club tonight. Need space to think. I crumpled it and threw it away. Then I went upstairs and started packing a suitcase. Not to leave. To be ready. My phone rang. Trevor. Mom, what's going on? Dad says you're trying to take everything. Did he tell you about Kelly Morrison? Silence. Trevor, did you know your father was having an affair? Diane said it was complicated. That sometimes married people have arrangements. Diane knew. Mom, everyone makes mistakes. Your father didn't make a mistake, Trevor. He made a choice. Every day for 4 years. And everyone knew except me. That's not fair. I didn't. You knew something. Even if you didn't want to see it. He was quiet. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me that what your father did was wrong. It's not that simple. Yes, Trevor, it really is. I hung up. Then I turned off my phone and sat in the silence, surrounded by evidence of my husband's betrayal, and waited for morning. Alan Kepler's office was on the 4th floor of a glass building on 17th Street. I arrived 15 minutes early and sat in my car, clutching the folder of documents I'd printed at Kinko's. My hands were steady. That surprised me. The receptionist smiled when I walked in. Mrs. Sullivan? Alan's expecting you. Coffee, please. Alan appeared in the doorway of his office. He was younger than I expected, maybe 45, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Margaret, come in. His office was warm. Books lined the walls, photos of his family on the desk. A boy and a girl, both teenagers. His wife had her arm around him in the largest photo. They looked happy. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, I said. Of course. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Tell me what's going on. I told him everything. The party, Richard's words, the hospital. Then I opened my folder and spread out the documents. Bank statements, hotel receipts, stock certificates, tax returns, showing my mother's $180,000 investment with no record of my equity stake. Alan studied each page carefully. He made notes on a yellow legal pad, asked questions about dates and amounts. When I showed him the stock certificates issued to Kelly Morrison, his eyebrows went up. This is significant, he said. Your husband transferred 20% of a company built with your inheritance to a third party with no legitimate capital contribution on record. Can I get it back? We can certainly try. Colorado is an equitable distribution state, which means the court divides marital property fairly, not necessarily equally. But fair can mean a lot of things. He tapped the stock certificates. This is fraud. He converted your separate property into marital property, then gave part of it away to his mistress. That's not just unfair, it's illegal. I felt something loosen in my chest. So I'm not crazy. You're not crazy. You're the victim of financial exploitation. Alan leaned back in his chair. Here's what I recommend. We file for divorce immediately and simultaneously file for a preliminary injunction to freeze all marital assets. That prevents Richard from transferring anything else while we sort this out. We also demand a full forensic audit of Sullivan property holdings. How long will that take? The audit? Several months, but the injunction can happen within days if we move fast. He looked at me directly. Margaret, I need to be honest with you. This is going to be expensive. My retainer is $15,000, and a case like this could run $50,000 or more in legal fees. My stomach dropped. I don't have that kind of money. Richard controls everything. Do you have access to any joint accounts? Credit cards? One credit card. The limit is $25,000. Alan nodded slowly. Use it. Pay my retainer today. The court will likely order Richard to cover your legal fees eventually, but we need to get started now before he freezes you out completely. I pulled out the credit card. My hand shook slightly as I handed it to him. This was it, the point of no return. One more thing, Alan said as his assistant processed the payment. Richard will receive the divorce petition and injunction notice within 48 hours. He's going to be very angry. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? Safe? I'm not saying he's violent, but financial abuse and emotional abuse often escalate when the victim tries to leave. I want you to have a plan. I thought about the empty house, Richard's cold eyes, the way he'd tested my door lock in the middle of the night. I can stay with my sister in Florida if I need to. Good. Keep that option open. Alan walked me to the door. We're going to get through this, Margaret. You did the right thing coming here. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in days. The sun was bright outside. I walked to my car and sat behind the wheel for a long moment, just breathing. Then I drove to the bank and withdrew $500 in cash from our joint account. Not enough to trigger any alerts, just enough to have something in my pocket that Richard couldn't track. After that, I went to Target and bought a burner phone. $39.99 for 60 days of service. I was learning to think like someone who expected betrayal. It was a strange, cold feeling. When I got home, Richard's car was in the driveway. I found him in the kitchen, making lunch. He looked up when I walked in. Where were you? Out. I called you 3 times. Your phone went straight to voicemail. I turned it off. I needed some quiet. He studied me. Sam said you were upset yesterday, acting paranoid. Sam doesn't know anything about how I'm acting. She's worried about you. We all are. His voice was gentle now, the concerned husband. Margaret, I think you should talk to someone. A therapist, maybe. Dr. Patterson at the club recommended someone who specializes in what? Wives who won't tolerate being humiliated? In stress management. You've been through a lot. Finding out about Kelly was a shock. I understand that. But therapy could help you process it in a healthier way. I almost laughed. He was trying to paint me as unstable, setting the groundwork to claim I was irrational, emotional, unable to make sound decisions. I don't need therapy, Richard. I need a divorce. His expression hardened. We talked about this. I made you an offer. $75,000 and a clean break. I spoke to a lawyer this morning. The color drained from his face. You did what? Alan Kepler. He's filing for divorce on my behalf. You should receive the papers in the next day or two. Richard set down his sandwich very carefully. You actually did it. You hired a lawyer. Yes. Oh, with what money? The credit card. That's marital debt, Margaret. You just stuck both of us with your lawyer's fees. Actually, the court will probably order you to pay my legal costs, since you control all our assets, and I have no income. His jaw tightened. Who told you that? Alan did. He specializes in cases like mine. Financial exploitation, he called it. Financial exploitation. Richard's laugh was bitter. I gave you everything. This house, the cars, the country club membership. You've never wanted for anything. Except honesty. except respect. I gave you 35 years of my life. No, Richard. I gave you 35 years of mine. You gave me lies. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You're going to regret this. I have the best lawyers in Denver. They will destroy you. Maybe. But at least everyone will know the truth. What truth? That I had an affair? Plenty of men have affairs, Margaret. It doesn't mean they deserve to lose everything. You didn't just have an affair. You stole from me. My mother's money. You took it and gave it to Kelly. I invested it, built a company. That's not stealing. We'll let the judge decide. I walked past him toward the stairs. He grabbed my arm, not hard but firm enough to stop me. Margaret, listen to me. If you go through with this, I will make sure you end up with nothing. I will drag this out for years. I will make it so expensive you'll have to give up. And in the end, you'll walk away with exactly what I decide to give you. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up at his face. You said something on Saturday night. You said you wished you'd never married me. I was drunk. No, you were honest. For the first time in 4 years, maybe longer, you told me the truth. I pulled my arm free. You wanted me gone. Well, now I'm leaving, but I'm not leaving empty-handed. I went upstairs and closed the bedroom door. My burner phone buzzed. A text from Alan. Papers filed. Injunction hearing scheduled for Wednesday, 10 a.m. Don't discuss case with Richard. I deleted the text and put the phone in my nightstand drawer under a stack of old magazines. 2 hours later, I heard Richard's car leave. I watched from the upstairs window as he drove away, his face tight with anger. My regular phone rang. Trevor. Mom, what did you do? What do you mean? Dad just called me. He said you hired a lawyer. He said you're trying to take the company. I'm trying to get back what's mine. The company is his, Mom. He built it. With my money. That was 30 years ago. You can't just... Yes, Trevor. I can. And I am. Diane says you're having some kind of breakdown. That you need help. Diane can say whatever she wants. I'm done caring what she thinks. This is crazy. You're tearing apart the family over money. Your father tore apart this family when he chose Kelly Morrison over his wife. Trevor was quiet for a moment. I don't understand why you're doing this. I know you don't, and that's the saddest part of all. I hung up before he could respond. Wednesday morning came. The injunction hearing was quick, almost perfunctory. Richard's lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Patricia Chen, argued that freezing the assets would damage the business. Alan calmly presented the stock certificates showing the transfer to Kelly, the hotel receipts, the bank statements. The judge, a tired-looking man in his 60s, barely looked up. Preliminary injunction granted. All marital assets frozen pending full disclosure and audit. Mr. Sullivan, you are not to transfer, sell, or encumber any property without court approval. Richard's face went white. Outside the courtroom, Patricia pulled Richard aside. I saw them talking, her gesturing sharply, him shaking his head. Then she walked away, leaving him standing alone in the hallway. Alan touched my arm. That went well. The audit will start next week. What happens now? Now Richard has to provide full disclosure of all assets, income, debts, everything, and the forensic accountant will go through it all with a fine-tooth comb. If he's hidden anything, we'll find it. I nodded. Thank you, Alan. Don't thank me yet. We're just getting started. That evening, my phone rang. Richard. I let it go to voicemail. He called 3 more times. Finally, I answered. What? You need to stop this. His voice was tight with controlled rage. You're embarrassing me. The injunction notice was delivered to my office this morning. In front of Kelly. In front of my entire staff. Good. Good? You think humiliating me is good? You humiliated me in front of 50 people at Trevor's party. Consider us even. This is different. This is business. This affects my reputation. Your reputation as what? A faithful husband? That ship sailed 4 years ago. Silence on the other end. Then, you're going to regret this, Margaret. You said that already. I'm still waiting to feel the regret. I gave you a chance to walk away with something. Now you'll get nothing. You know what, Richard? You said on Saturday night that you wished you'd never married me. Well, now you're getting exactly what you always wanted. Freedom. I hung up before he could respond. Then I sat in the empty house and smiled. For the first time in 35 years, I'd had the last word. The forensic accountant's name was Michael Reeves. He was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who spoke in precise, clipped sentences. He came to Alan's office 3 weeks after the injunction hearing to present his preliminary findings. I sat across from him, my hands folded in my lap, while he opened a 3-inch binder. Mrs. Sullivan, I've been through 4 years of financial records for Sullivan Property Holdings and your husband's personal accounts. What I found is significant. He turned the binder toward me. Rows of numbers, highlighted in yellow and pink. Over the past 4 years, your husband transferred a total of $420,000 from joint marital accounts into a personal account held solely in his name. From there, the money was moved in smaller increments to various purposes: hotel stays, jewelry purchases, car payments for a vehicle registered to Kelly Morrison, and finally, stock transfers. $420,000, I repeated. Yes. The stock certificates you provided show that Ms. Morrison received 20% equity in the company. Based on current valuation, that stake is worth approximately $3 million. The room tilted slightly. $2.3 million. Your husband essentially gave Ms. Morrison a multi-million-dollar asset using funds that should have been considered marital property. Michael adjusted his glasses. There's more. I found evidence that Mr. Sullivan has been preparing to divorce you for at least 18 months. What? He consulted with a divorce attorney in March of last year, Patricia Chen, the same lawyer representing him now. There are emails discussing asset protection strategies, ways to minimize your claim. He also moved $85,000 into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands 2 months ago. Alan leaned forward. Can we recover that? Possibly, but it's going to take time. Michael turned another page. There's one more thing. Mr. Sullivan made a personal loan to Trevor and Diane Sullivan in the amount of $80,000 last year. According to the promissory note, it was for a business investment, but I can't find any record of where that money went. A business investment, I said. Trevor never mentioned starting a business. The money was withdrawn in cash. No paper trail after that. I thought about Trevor and Diane's house, their new furniture, the European vacation they'd taken last fall, Diane's designer handbags. So the money's gone, I said. Unless they can account for it, yes. And if it was a legitimate loan, Trevor owes it back to the marital estate. If it was a gift, it's considered a dissipation of marital assets, which works in your favor. Alan looked at me. Margaret, this is better than I expected. Richard's financial misconduct is clear and documented. We have grounds for a disproportionate distribution in your favor. How much? 70-30 split isn't unreasonable, maybe more, depending on how cooperative Richard is with disclosure. I nodded slowly, trying to process everything. $420,000, $2.3 million to Kelly, $80,000 to Trevor that disappeared. There's one more thing, Michael said quietly. The original $180,000 your mother left you. I traced it through the company's early financial records. It was used as seed capital, yes, but the company was profitable within 2 years. Your husband could have repaid that investment many times over. He chose not to. Instead, he treated it as his own money. So what does that mean? It means you have a legitimate claim to 50% of the company's value, not as a marital asset, but as restitution for an unpaid debt. Alan smiled. Michael, you just made my day. After the meeting, I sat in my car for a long time. The parking garage was dim and cool. I called Trevor. He answered on the 4th ring. Mom, I'm at work. I need to talk to you about the $80,000 Dad gave you last year. Silence. Trevor? How did you know about that? The forensic accountant found it. Where did the money go? It was an investment. Dad had this opportunity, a property flip. He said if I put in $80,000, I'd double it in 6 months. And did you? The deal fell through. Dad said the market shifted. So you lost $80,000. He said he'd pay me back when things stabilized. Trevor, that money came from our joint account, money that should have been split in the divorce. Your father essentially gave you a gift using my money. And now it's gone. It wasn't like that. It was a legitimate investment. Then why was it withdrawn in cash? Why is there no paperwork, no LLC, no property records? Trevor was quiet. Diane handled the details. She said Dad wanted to keep it off the books for tax reasons. Oh, Trevor. What? You gave your father $80,000 in cash and didn't ask questions because Diane told you not to. I trusted him. He's my father. He's also the man who stole my inheritance and gave it to his mistress. But you trusted him. Mom, that's not fair. You're right. None of this is fair. But you need to understand something. That money is gone. Your father used you. He used both of us. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking now, not with fear, but with anger. That evening, I was making dinner when the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Kelly Morrison standing on my porch. She was even prettier in person than in her photos. Blonde hair pulled back in a low ponytail, minimal makeup, wearing jeans and a loose sweater. She looked young and nervous. I opened the door. Mrs. Sullivan? Her voice was soft. I'm Kelly. I think we should talk. I don't have anything to say to you. Please, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She stood in my entryway, looking around at the house with something like sadness in her eyes. I know you hate me, she began. I don't hate you. I don't know you well enough to hate you. Richard said you were trying to destroy the company, that you were being vindictive. Richard says a lot of things. Most of them are lies. Kelly's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know. About the money. About your inheritance. He told me he'd bought out a previous partner, that the stock was his to give. And you believed him. I loved him. I still do. She put a hand on her stomach, a protective gesture. I'm pregnant. 3 months. The words hit me like cold water. Congratulations. He doesn't know yet. I came here to tell him, but his car isn't here. He's probably at the club, or with his lawyer. Kelly wiped her eyes. I didn't come here to hurt you. I came to ask you to stop. Please. If you take the company, if you destroy everything he's built, what happens to our baby? That's not my problem. But it is. You're a mother. You understand. This baby deserves a father who can provide. I stared at her. This young woman carrying my husband's child, standing in my house, asking me to give up what was mine so her baby could have a comfortable life. Get out, I said quietly. Mrs. Sullivan, get out of my house, now. She left, shoulders shaking. I watched through the window as she got into a silver BMW, sat behind the wheel for a long moment, then drove away. 20 minutes later, Diane arrived. She didn't ring the bell, just walked in like she owned the place. We need to talk, Margaret. Not interested. I just heard from Kelly. She told me she's pregnant. Good for her. Do you understand what this means? Richard's going to have another child. Trevor's going to have a half-sibling. This affects all of us. It doesn't affect me. Richard and I are getting divorced. Diane sat down on my couch without being invited. I have a proposal. Drop the lawsuit. Take the $75,000 Richard originally offered. Maybe we can push him to $100,000. Sign a non-disclosure agreement. Walk away clean. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, this gets ugly. Really ugly. Richard will drag this out for years. He'll spend $1 million on lawyers just to spite you. And in the end, you'll be broke and alone. I'm already alone, Diane. You don't have to be. We're family. We can work this out. I looked at her carefully. What's in this for you? She shifted slightly. I want what's best for everyone. No. What's really in this for you? Her face flushed. Fine. The $80,000 Trevor borrowed from Richard. If you keep pushing this forensic audit, it's going to come out that we can't pay it back. That money is gone. Trevor could be held liable. So you want me to drop the case to protect you and Trevor, to protect the family, including you. I'm not family anymore. You made that very clear. Diane stood up. You're making a mistake. Richard will destroy you. He can try. After she left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in Richard's chair, the leather one he loved. It felt strange sitting there, occupying his space. My phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. Can we meet? Tomorrow? Please? I typed back. Noon. Starbucks on Colorado Boulevard. The next day, Trevor was already there when I arrived. He looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. He stood when he saw me. Mom. Trevor. We got coffee and sat in the corner, away from other people. He stared into his cup for a long moment before speaking. I talked to Dad last night. About everything. The money, Kelly, the offshore account. And? He said you forced his hand, that you were threatening to take everything, so he had to protect himself. Do you believe that? Trevor looked up at me, his eyes red. I don't know what to believe anymore. Kelly came to see him yesterday. Told him she's pregnant. He seemed happy about it. I'm sure he did. Mom, I'm sorry. For everything. For not defending you at the party. For believing Diane when she said you were being dramatic. For taking Dad's side. Why are you apologizing now? Because I realized something. Dad's been lying to all of us. The investment money he took from me and Diane? There was no investment. He used it to pay off Kelly's student loans and buy her car. Diane found the paperwork last night. I set down my coffee cup. Trevor, I know, I was stupid. I trusted him because he's my father, and I thought fathers didn't lie to their sons. His voice broke, but he did. He lied to you for 4 years. He lied to me. He's been planning this divorce for over a year, protecting his assets, moving money around, and we all just went along with it. What are you going to do? I don't know. Diane wants me to talk you into dropping the lawsuit. She's terrified about the $80,000. But I can't ask you to do that. It wouldn't be right. For the first time in weeks, I saw my son. Not Richard's puppet, but Trevor. The boy I raised. Thank you, I said quietly. For what? For finally seeing the truth. He reached across the table and took my hand. I'm on your side, Mom. Whatever you decide to do. I'm with you. I squeezed his hand, tears burning my eyes. That's all I ever wanted. Alan called me on a Thursday morning, 6 weeks after Kelly's visit. His voice was tight with controlled excitement. Margaret, we have him. The forensic audit is complete, and it's worse than we thought. Richard moved $85,000 offshore, gave Kelly stock worth $2, $3 million, and there's evidence of tax fraud going back 3 years. The IRS is already interested. What does that mean? It means Richard has 2 choices. He accepts our settlement terms, or he faces criminal charges for tax evasion and fraud. I'm recommending a 70-30 split of all assets in your favor. Plus, he covers all your legal fees and pays back the $180,000 your mother left you with interest. Will he accept? He doesn't have a choice. Patricia called me this morning. They want to settle. We met in a conference room downtown. Richard sat across from me, his face gray and tired. Patricia was beside him, her expression neutral. Kelly wasn't there. Neither was Sam. Alan laid out the terms. 70% of all marital assets to me. The house would be sold, and I'd get 70% of the proceeds. Richard would pay my legal fees, currently at $48,000, and he'd return the $180,000 plus 29 years of interest, which Alan calculated at $312,000. This is robbery, Richard said quietly. No, I replied. Robbery is what you did to me. Patricia put a hand on Richard's arm. Sign it. The alternative is prison. Richard picked up the pen. His hand shook slightly as he signed page after page. When he finished, he looked at me directly for the first time. I hope you're satisfied. I'm not satisfied, Richard. I'm just done. He stood and walked out without another word. Patricia gathered her papers and followed. Alan turned to me. How do you feel? Empty, but also free. Trevor had already filed for divorce from Diane the week before. She'd refused to explain where the $80,000 went, refused to accept any responsibility. When Trevor found the bank statements showing the money went to Kelly's student loans, he packed a bag and moved into a hotel. I married my father, he told me over coffee. Someone who cares more about money and appearances than people. I can't do that anymore. I'm sorry, Trevor. Don't be. You showed me what strength looks like, what it means to stand up for yourself. Sam tried to call me 3 times after the settlement was finalized. I never answered. Alan had found emails between her and Richard, messages where they discussed how to manage me, how to convince me to accept a minimal settlement. Sam had known everything from the beginning and actively helped Richard hide assets. I sent her one text. "I know what you did. Don't contact me again." She didn't. The house sold in 4 weeks. A young couple with 2 small children bought it for $1. $4 million. I walked through it one last time before closing, remembering the 35 years I'd spent there, the kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals, the living room where Trevor took his first steps, the bedroom where I'd slept beside a man who was a stranger. I felt nothing. That house had never really been mine anyway. I bought a small condo in Capitol Hill, 2 bedrooms, mountain views, 15 minutes from Trevor's new apartment. It cost $380,000. I paid cash. Kelly had the baby in November, a boy. Richard posted one photo on social media, him holding a wrinkled newborn, his smile forced. The comments were congratulatory, but I noticed several mutual friends had unfriended him. People talked. They knew what he'd done. Trevor and I had dinner every Sunday. Sometimes he brought takeout to my place, sometimes we went out. We were rebuilding slowly, carefully. Trust didn't come back overnight, but we were trying. "Diane's engaged," he told me one evening over Thai food. "Some lawyer she met at the gym, 3 months after our divorce was finalized. Are you okay?" "Yeah, actually I am. She did me a favor, showed me who she really was." "Your father taught you something valuable then." Trevor smiled, but it was sad. "He taught me what not to be." 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I was organizing my home office when my phone rang. Alan's name appeared on the screen. "Margaret, we have a problem." My stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "I just got a call from the title company. Richard's trying to transfer 2 commercial properties into an offshore LLC, properties that were part of the marital estate. If he succeeds, they'll be beyond the court's reach. Can he do that?" "Not legally, but he's using a power of attorney dated before the divorce, claiming you signed it 5 years ago, authorizing him to manage real estate transactions." "I never signed anything like that." "I know. It's forged. But if he files it in the Cayman Islands before we can stop him, those properties disappear. They're worth about $800,000 combined. Your 70% share would be $560,000. How do we stop him?" "We need to file an emergency motion in court showing the power of attorney is fraudulent. But we need proof, original signatures, handwriting analysis. And we need it fast." He's scheduled the transfer for Monday morning. Today's Friday. So we have 72 hours. 60, actually. We need to file by Sunday night to get an emergency hearing Monday morning. I sat down heavily. "What do you need from me?" "Any documents you signed around 5 years ago. Mortgage paperwork, tax returns, anything with your signature. We need to prove your signature on the power of attorney doesn't match your real signature from that time period." I spent Friday evening going through boxes of old paperwork I'd stored in my closet. Tax returns, mortgage refinancing documents, insurance forms, everything I'd signed in 2018 and 2019. Saturday morning, I took them to Alan's office. He'd brought in a handwriting expert, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who examined documents through a magnifying glass and made careful notes. "These signatures are all consistent," she said after an hour. "Clean, confident strokes. The signature on the power of attorney is different. The pressure's uneven, the angle is wrong. This is either a forgery or it was signed under duress." "Can you testify to that?" Alan asked. "Absolutely. I can have a full report ready by tomorrow evening." Sunday afternoon, Alan filed the emergency motion. I sat in my condo waiting, unable to focus on anything. Trevor came over with pizza, but neither of us ate much. "He's not going to stop, is he?" Trevor said quietly. "Dad's going to keep trying to hide money, move assets, even after everything." "Probably. I'm testifying for you at the hearing tomorrow, if you'll have me." I looked at my son. "You don't have to do that." "Yes, I do." He's been using me to get to you for months, telling me you were unstable, that you were being greedy. I believed him because I wanted to believe him, but I was wrong, and I need to make it right. Monday morning, the courtroom was nearly empty. Richard sat with Patricia, his face expressionless. Kelly wasn't there. Sam wasn't there. Just Richard, alone. The judge reviewed Alan's motion and Dr. Chen's report. Then Trevor took the stand. "Mr. Sullivan, how do you know the defendant?" the judge asked. "He's my father." "And you're testifying for your mother?" "Yes, Your Honor. My father has been systematically hiding assets and lying to my mother throughout their divorce. I have first-hand knowledge of this because he involved me in some of these schemes." Richard's face went pale. Trevor testified about the $80,000 loan that was really a gift to Kelly, about conversations where Richard discussed moving money offshore, about the forged documents. When he finished, the judge looked at Richard. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm granting the emergency injunction. The property transfers are blocked. Furthermore, I'm ordering you to appear for a deposition regarding possible fraud charges. If you attempt to move any other assets, I will hold you in contempt." Richard stood slowly. He looked at Trevor, then at me. For a moment, I thought he might say something. An apology, an explanation, anything. But he just turned and walked out. Patricia stayed behind. "Margaret, for what it's worth, I advised him not to do this. The forgery, the offshore accounts. He wouldn't listen." "He never did," I said. Outside the courthouse, Trevor hugged me. "It's over, Mom. Really over. For now." "What do you mean?" "Your father has 72 hours to comply with the judge's order. If he doesn't, he goes to jail for contempt. But there's no guarantee he'll comply. He might try something else. Move money somewhere we can't trace." Trevor pulled back. "So what do? We wait, and we watch." That evening, I sat in my condo looking at the mountains through my window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone was on the table beside me waiting for Alan's call. Richard had 72 hours to prove he wasn't a criminal. 72 hours to decide if his pride was worth more than his freedom. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. The one who'd spent 6 hours making a birthday cake for a son who barely thanked her. The one who'd accepted her husband's cruelty as normal. The one who'd been invisible in her own life. That woman was gone. I picked up my phone and called Carol in Florida. "I'm thinking of visiting, maybe for Christmas." "Margaret, I'd love that. How are you?" "I'm good. Really good, actually." And for the first time in 35 years, I meant it. Outside, the sun disappeared behind the mountains. The sky turned dark. My phone sat silent on the table. Somewhere in Denver, Richard was making a choice. Compliance or contempt. Honesty or more lies. I didn't know which he'd choose, but it didn't matter anymore. Whatever happened next, I would face it. Not as Richard's wife, not as Trevor's mother, but as myself. Margaret Sullivan, 58 years old, free. The phone buzzed. A text from Alan. "Richard's lawyer called. He's complying. Transfer's canceled. It's really over." I set the phone down and smiled. Yes, it was over, and I was just beginning.